Hi, this is Ben Hollifield from Yonza Labs, wanting to get you up to speed with the latest features and functionality in TrendSeeker for ServiceNow. TrendSeeker has been around for quite some time. You can go back and watch some of our early demo videos to see some of the original functionality and much of the functionality that's still there today. And you can tell by the ServiceNow UI in those videos just how long TrendSeeker's been around. However, across the years, TrendSeeker has been slowly evolving based on customer feedback. We've added features and functionality, so I wanted to take this chance to breeze through the forums and show you some of the new things TrendSeeker can do. Now, as a reminder, TrendSeeker is an application that proactively identifies trends in your ServiceNow environment to allow you to take action on those trends before they become a problem. And it does so based on rules that you create. So an example of a TrendSeeker rule that comes with the product is this right here. We call it CI problem. It's a rule that looks for above average P1 incidents on any CI. This makes sense. If you have a bunch of incidents for the same CI that keep cropping up, odds are there's an issue with that CI. So you want to create a problem and address that before it gets too serious. To do that, you start by telling TrendSeeker what to detect. In this case, we want to look at the incident table, aggregate around each configuration item with a condition that the incident is a P1. Essentially, this gives us a count of all P1 incidents for each configuration item. We then compare that against a threshold. In this case, it could be a scripted or static threshold, but this is a scripted threshold for the average plus one standard deviation. If this count goes above this threshold, then we're going to take some action. And note that we can also do this within a schedule, right? You might not want to do these counts during your blackout Wednesdays or during change windows. But if we meet the threshold within the appropriate schedule, then we need to react. How do we react? Now, initially, we just allowed you to create a record, and that worked for a lot of people. However, it turns out there's quite a bit more that people want to do with this. So we have a bunch of options now. One option is to trigger an event. You can tell it which event to trigger, and it'll create that event. And this is super flexible. It allows you to create a notification to your ServiceNow admins, to kick off a workflow, to create a record, whatever you might want to do with an event. We can also do the original create record. Let's create a record. In this case, we'll create a problem, and let's set a few values on that problem record using this creation script. And we can take any values from the correlation that was detected by TrendSeeker to pop in there. For instance, the CI, we can put in a short description. There's more we could gather there. Then there are some more granular things. In addition to creating a record, you can run a script on initial detection, run a script on additive detection, or run a script every time it detects. It's important to note that TrendSeeker will create an initial correlation and create a correlation record that I'll show you in a moment for one of these things it detects. However, it will keep on trying to look at these trends and add new records, add new P1 incidents, things like that to these correlations as it detects them. And for those additive detections, it might need to do something a little different. So for instance, in the reaction script, we have a process by which we gather all of the incidents that are associated with this correlation and we add them to the problem. For the additive script, it's a little bit different. We want to gather just the new one that was added and add that to the incident. There are lots of different circumstances where you may need to do something a little bit different when you first create the incident or create the correlation, create whatever record you're creating, and when you do it subsequently. And of course, there are some things you might want to do all the time, in which case you can do the run script always. And then finally, if you wish, you can apply a template against the record you create, in this case, a problem record. Some other things we've added, in addition to this much more granular reaction capability, is some more granular frequencies, timeframes, cooldowns, how those things work. It used to be this would just run once per day, and that's all you got. Now we're allowing you to run this at very high frequencies, and you get to establish frequency per rule. You might have some rules you want to run once a week, some rules you want to run once a day, and some rules you want to watch every 15 minutes to make sure things are kosher. We also now do have the ability to work against thresholds of 0. That was not something we could do before. We never recognized the null case whenever you ran a TrendSeeker rule. However, now we do include a 0 count, and for instance, a 0 count of incidents with a P1. Where this turns out to be effectively or especially useful is whenever you're using TrendSeeker to monitor integrations. If you find that you have a count of 0 new events coming into your instance, you may then assume that the integration or your event management system is down, and you want to trigger a notification or some sort of a record to check on that. So the new ability to check on the null case or counts of 0 is extremely useful for that. Now let's look at correlations. This is the richness of our TrendSeeker rules we can configure. However, whenever these things do trigger, we just create a correlation. And this is the same as it was before, not much different here. You can come and look at a correlation that was triggered. Whenever that happens, it gives you a brief description where it aggregates all of the data that it has gathered as part of the correlation. And then it also links up all the different records that are part of this, the rule that generated it, the detected record, and the record that was created as a result of the detection. So this is essentially the same as it was before. The correlations have not changed much. However, we've given you much more capabilities in how to create correlations, how frequently to check for them, and how to react whenever those are created. And one other nice thing we've added in this latest version is part of the rule. You can now order these rules. So if you have dozens or more TrendSeeker rules running in your environment and some of them are running in the same job, you can now set an order to prioritize certain rules to run first. If you have lots of these running, it might take a while, but your highest priority, your most important rules you can set to run first. So you know they are always the top priority. They always get top billing when you're checking for correlations. And then finally, if you need to run a TrendSeeker rule outside of the schedule that you have set, a good example would be something like in a workflow where you need to check for some issue or a health check of your instance. You might need to run a TrendSeeker rule on demand. And we've now added an API call where you can feed this API an encoded query that matches against these TrendSeeker rules and run any of the rules you want to on demand. So this might be useful for your automations in your instance. And that's all the new stuff in TrendSeeker. It may not look like much, but when you get in and start applying this to your instance, we find that customers start with one simple rule. That's why they get TrendSeeker, and then they find more and more and more ways that TrendSeeker can automate some of the health checks and things they do in their environment. Some of the things our customers do are very creative, and we're excited to see what you do with it. If you want to try this out, it's available in the ServiceNow store. You can visit and trial it for free. And if it's something that you like, you can buy right from the store and start using it in production immediately. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time. Bye.